into item F2. Commissioner Tobias, do you want, I've got cards on this. Do you want to open? And then I'm going to call the comment cards.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is dealing with the 2023-2024 budget of the supervisor elections, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. I have Ms. Sandra Sullivan.
Sandra Sullivan, South Patrick Shores. I was pretty shocked to see this on the agenda. I mean, I absolutely sat in my chair and laughed my head off. I've never seen anything like this. I'm going to suggest that Commissioner Tobias recuse himself from this vote as a conflict of interest, given that he is running for the supervisor election position. There's just been some shenanigans, in my opinion, that I am really uncomfortable with lately. When I look at who is contributing to that SOE race, and I look at the candidates, what you don't see is the lobbyists on there. You don't see the lobbyists anywhere. And, you know, for most of you that are sitting up on this dais, you pretty much have to have the lobbyists behind you to get elected. Elections are won by vote by mail. Everybody knows that with the way the elections are done today. And so we go back to this incorporation, this feasibility study. Why would District 3 fund a feasibility study for Merritt Island? Is it to solicit, to encourage?
Ma'am, if you'd stay on topic.
Yeah, it is related. So if you don't get if you don't succeed and you don't get those lobbyists behind you, in my opinion, if I was in that position, I'd be feeling pretty desperate about my election potential. And so every piece of mailing, as he's previously stated here on the dais, every piece of mailing that goes out for vote by mail or whatever's going out, it's got Tibble Bannock on his name on the top. So, you know, he's dealing with that. So this seems to be politically motivated. I'm just going to call it out as such. That's my opinion. And, you know, I find this to give me heartburn, and I called it the clown show. Have a good day.
I have Miss Diana Schrammer. Did I say your name right? Miss Diana, SCH. Oh, thank you.
It's like Schmidt or Schwartz or any of those. The C is pretty superfluous.
All right. Ma'am.
Yeah, I'm here to speak about not shifting money from the SOE's office to the lifeguards. The suggestion of Tobias to transfer funds from the SOE office to the lifeguards, he would achieve this reduction to the SOE, an office he is currently running for, by eliminating sample ballots. This would be a travesty. People rely on these sample ballots to do their research before voting. Without the sample ballots, people show up to vote without knowing what is on the ballot, or because of the way those ballots are worded, sometimes with double negatives, making it a positive. It takes a Philadelphia lawyer to figure out what they're really saying. Secure elections should be the most important job of Brevard County. It should supersede everything else. This move weakens our elections, in my opinion. It is also a travesty not to provide postage on the vote-by-mail ballots. Most people would not know the correct postage to put on these oversized envelopes. I wouldn't. The taxpayer should have some conveniences for all the money that they give to the county. Tobias should recuse himself from this discussion as he is running for this office, and the SOE's budget is a conflict of interest. As a side note, we who live on Merritt Island would also like it if he would stop trying to push incorporation on us. It should be noted that Tim Bobanek, the current SOE, has one of the lowest costs per voter budgets in the state. He is doing a great job, and I want to see him keep it. Thank you.
Volz. Oh, there you are. Hi, ma'am. Welcome back.
Hi, Helen Volz, West Melbourne. I am here to speak in favor of Tim Bobanek's budget. From what I understand, you all have already approved the budget, and John, you did vote for the budget, which includes the supervisor of elections budget, and things that were already said previously by the previous lady I just echo those. I think it is a conflict of interest for Mr. Tobias to have a vote on this since he is running for office. And I'd like to ask the attorney, when you are in office and you're running for another office, do you not have to resign your office to run for another office?
No, ma'am, you don't.
You don't?
No, but we'll do those questions later. I don't want to catch him off on something hard, just in case.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I am just in favor of Tim keeping his position, keeping his budget the way it is. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And I saved you for last, Mr. Bobanek.
My head's a little hotter than Helen's over here. So, thank you, Commissioners, for the opportunity to speak on this critical agenda item. As Ms. Volz pointed out, I'm happy to see that this board has already approved the submitted budget that's tentatively approved. I want to address the three areas of reduction proposed by Commissioner Tobias. The first is the return postage on vote by mail. Prepaid postage was implemented in 2021 and has been included in the budget approved by this board for the last 2 fiscal years. The answer as to why we need to keep postage paid return mail ballots is simple. Voters shouldn't have to pay to cast their vote. To now take this away from the voters when they have now used it for multiple elections would cause confusion and would be a great disservice to the voters, especially our elderly population. The next thing I want to talk about is sample ballots. Sample ballots are the most critical tool to educate voters. They contain the voter's precinct and polling place location and address, the identification requirements to vote, list of early voting sites with days and times that they're open, information about returning mail ballots to secure ballot intake stations, list of supervisor of elections administrative offices, and election day instructions. To put things into perspective, I ran the numbers on Commissioner Tobias' proposal to change the sample ballot. Based on Florida Today subscriber rates and email sample ballot requests, 81% of voters in this county would not receive a sample ballot. If approved, this will create massive lines at the polls and early voting sites because the vast majority of voters won't have the necessary information to study the ballot prior to voting. It will also trigger a deluge of calls to my office from angry voters wondering why they didn't get a sample ballot after having received one for the last 15 years. It's amazing to me that a candidate for supervisor of elections thinks it's a good idea to not send sample ballots to 81% of the voters. Last, let's talk about the prepaid postage. While working on the 23-24 postage budget, my office opted to leave a few categories that would typically be budgeted at a lower total amount. This was done knowing that there would be postage balances left on the permit to cover these expenses, and there would be no need to request additional dollars. At the request of Chair Pritchett, earlier today we sent a revised budget request, which includes the postage prepaid amount as a negative expense item and the full budget of the postage needs for FY 23-24. This postage amount includes statutory mandated mailings to include voter roll list maintenance postcards, felony mental incapacity, certified mailings, Form 1 delinquency notices, payments to vendors, and other general correspondence. According to the email from the County Manager Frank Abate on Friday, September 1st, quote, the proposed FY23 budget for ocean rescue was $3.3 million. While this amount does not fully fund the annualization of the expanded services of $3.5, there is some flexibility within the fire rescue proposed budget if needed to ensure the enhanced services are provided for the full year. The proposed budget does not, the proposed budget here fully funds the EDC and the supervisor of elections budget. I have more, but obviously I'm out of time.
Tell you what, if you would just stick around in case there's questions.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm going to close the public comment section, but don't go too far. Mr. Still, is that a new light, sir?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You know, Commissioner Tobias and I don't always get along, but for someone to come up here tonight and call him unethical is insulting. John Tobias works his fanny off for this county, and I'm going to tell you right now, he's one of the best commissioners that we have. He does a lot of research, and certainly he's running for the position that you have now, Tim. But he has every right in the world to voice his opinion in regards to these issues. I think it's absolutely disgusting that you folks are trying to recuse him from a job that he has to do constitutionally, which is vote on these issues tonight. Now, as far as the cuts that we're talking about, I'm going to tell you that I don't have any use for sample ballots either. I think they are a complete waste of money. I think what happens with a lot of sample ballots is somebody in the family goes and they fill them out and they give them to their parents and they say, here's how you vote. Very seldom do sample ballots, I mean, you get some sample ballots being used, but there's a lot of ways that you can put that out to save that money. Tim, I appreciated your call, and I thank you for your call, and I just, at least on the sample ballot things, I think that's a waste of money. So that and to try to insinuate that Commissioner Tobias is unethical is just disgusting. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to go through the lights, but real quick before we do, I did want to talk about what Mr. Bobanek had discussed. And I do appreciate you, sir, working hard with the CPA and the county and getting the budget to where the budget is good now. So I'm comfortable with the budget. We might work on moving that line item to another place later, but it's all transparent now and in there, and I appreciate that a whole bunch, sir. And I do want to say this too, you know, if I tell Commissioner Tobias he has to recluse himself, I'm going to have Mr. Bobanek too, because he's running as well. So we need to just have discussions out in the public, transparent, and it's all good. But I will piggyback on, Commissioner Tobias isn't always comfortable, but he has really done well saving all of us a lot of money. We put everything we can out online now because everything we do is out in the public. So I do appreciate that work he always does, and it's not comfortable. But he has done a good job holding our nose to the fire of what we need to do the best we can with the county. So on that, I don't know where we're going to be on all this right now, but Commissioner Tobias, if you would jump in, because I know it's his budget, so I need to figure out what you're thinking on this.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Tobias, you're next, and then Mr. Feltner.
Thanks. I'd like to go over the basics here and then respond to some of the stuff that was put out. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Bobanek for his quick responses to the board inquiries as well as his follow-ups. After reviewing the data he sent and conferring with the county attorney's office, I have confirmed that the supervisor's estimates about $320,538.34 in discretionary mailing expenses for the 2023-2024 budget. To be clear, we'd not be having this conversation if his request wasn't 19.4% higher than the previous year. It's been brought up about the authority to reduce funding, and there is no reduction here, and I'll get there in just a minute. But according to Florida Statute 129.201, Section 4, the board may, quote, amend, modify, increase, or reduce any or all items of expenditure in the proposed budget as submitted. However, the board cannot ask for these modifications at the sub-object code level. Therefore, I have modified suggestions to the supervisor elections operating expenditures for his 2023-2024 budget. And I'll go over them briefly, but I want to point out what will not change here, not change one iota. This will not decrease access to voting opportunities. It will not reduce 1 day, 1 hour, or 1 minute that the polls are open. It will not cut one employee position, and it will not reduce any poll workers. Let me tell you what, if this passes, the net result will be. The supervisor's budget will be $952,611.66 higher than the previous year. Let me say that number again because it's pretty astounding. $952,611.66. In other words, an increase of 14.55%. I didn't think it would be fair to point out or just arbitrarily say your suggestion was far too high. We're going to give you more money, but not as much. So I outlined some areas that were discretionary. Again, they were confirmed by the county attorney as well as statute. So let me go over some of this stuff before I go over a motion. It was brought up about education and wait times. I looked up this 2020 Massachusetts Institute of Technology election lab study recommends reducing wait times by decreasing arrival rate, increasing number of services at bottlenecks, decreasing the service time at bottlenecks, and increasing service at arrival time variations. Studies from the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies, a think tank in Washington, D.C., and the Brennan Center for Justice, a liberal nonprofit, and New York University Law School make similar recommendations. None of these studies mention, state, or even imply use of sample ballots to shorten wait times. Often, as the supervisor has mentioned, sample ballots aren't even received until voters have already cast their official ballot. Voter education was brought up. Of the 15 primary duties listed on the website of the Brevard County Supervisor of Elections, education is not mentioned once. Statute is brought up. If the supervisor elections would like state statute change to reflect discretionary mailings to be made mandatory, the supervisor election has the Brevard delegation at his fingertips. According to the official supervisor election Facebook page, there have been visits from elected officials recently. Representative Robert Brackett, June 14th, 2023. Senator Tom Wright, August 1st, 2023. Chairman Randy Fine, August 15th, 2023. Senator Debbie Mayfield, August 23rd, 2023. And Representative Chase Tremont, September 1st, 2023. The political argument. I was initially skeptical of this argument, but have since changed my mind. At the June 28th, 2023 special meeting, the supervisor said, quote, "If you are talking about sample ballots, it will have my name on it once." I passed a copy of a sample ballot dutifully furnished by the supervisor of election. If you notice, and I've highlighted, his name is on there 3 times. I don't know if that was an error in his statement up here, but let me tell you what that will result in. That will result in discretionary spending of the supervisor election, his name out 2.5 million times at taxpayer expense. Control, and I've mentioned this before, the budget increase makes no cuts. The supervisor election office has the ability to send as many sample ballots with his name plastered all over them. As the supervisor of election is aware, I do not control what he does with his budget, so he does have the right to use taxpayer dollars for the purpose. However, he may have to make suggestions elsewhere. And if the supervisor is looking at providing a more conservative budget, maybe he should stop spending thousands of tax dollars at 5-star hotels such as the Ritz-Carlton in Virginia, as he did just this year. Again, this is an increase of 14.55%. Let me say that number again, $952,611.66 more than the previous year. As a conservative, it's hard to believe there is so much disdain over such a large increase. But as the supervisor, I'm sure is well aware, if he disagrees, he can file in circuit court according to Pinellas County v. Nelson, 1978. Though not an attorney, I don't know how much sympathy he will get from a judge when he is sleeping on 1,000+ count thread sheets at the Ritz-Carlton at taxpayer expense. I move to direct staff to fund the operation expenditure of the supervisor elections fiscal year 2023-2024 proposed budget in the amount of $4,573,910.66, resulting in a total allocation of fiscal year 2023-2024 budget allocation of $7,502,059.66. And to direct staff to provide written notice to the supervisor election of this action and to reallocate the savings to fire rescue capital infrastructure to be utilized at the county manager's discretion. That is the motion, Madam Chair.
Maybe we can split this. Can I ask you just a few questions, Mr. Bobanek? Thank you very much. So could we agree that there are in-person voters and there are mail voters?
Yes, although that dynamic has changed when the legislature wiped out all mail ballot requests.
I 100% agree with you there. But with regards, I think you said something to us before where when mail ballots go out very quickly after sample ballots go out. And to many people receiving a mail ballot, they also receive a sample ballot. Is that right?
That's correct.
So maybe one of the ways we could split this is, would you agree that one group gets one ballot and the other group gets the other sample ballot?
I'd have to look at the statutory legality of that, because it says you either mail it to all voters or you publish it in a newspaper of general circulation and send it to the email ballot requests.
Okay,
So
all right.
I wouldn't want to comment on that until I get some legal opinion on that.
Fair enough. How about on the presidential preference primary? Is it necessary that they receive sample ballots when there might only be one box on there with a handful?
The law says I have to send sample ballots for every election,
You can't?
not even for the
there isn't
presidential preference primary.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Bobanek, are you allowed to do like we do with the mail-in ballots, have people send in an email and request sample ballots?
Yes, and currently I have 68,000 voters who have requested an email sample ballot.
Okay.
But out of the 416,000 registered voters, Florida today has a subscriber rate on Sunday of 12,474.
Right.
So that leaves a little over 335,000 who would not get a sample ballot. And
So, but those who wanted them, I'm thinking about all avenues, they would be able then, because I know
They would
you-
have
the
to do that,
chief-
yes.
They could do that, so there's still an ability to get sample ballots.
it is, I would say, it'd be a challenge for a lot of voters who are not technically proficient, who don't have computers, a way to print that sample ballot.
Okay. You know, it's interesting, I know Commissioner Tobias on the sample ballots, I still struggle with paying the return postage on them, because I think what would be just better to do is put right on the envelope what you need to put on there to mail back. So that's kind of like a struggle for me, because every other office that I go to, I have to pay the postage, get anything sent back to me. So that would be one that I would like to be seen. Commissioner Tobias, I don't know where you're going to get the votes on this or how we're doing it, but that you do have in that amount, I think that 91,000, he did pull back into the budget. So I want to make you aware of that in case you hadn't saw that, what you're doing with your numbers here soon.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Goodson?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I would just wanted to bring up something. My office checked as far as Okeechobee and as far as all the way to the west. In about 10 counties right around us do this. This is nothing. Now, Commissioner Devine, may I ask this one question to you? You've sat on this board 7 years, correct?
Yes, sir.
There's been other elections, correct?
There's been other elections?
Yeah, prior elections. Lori Scott ran, correct?
Other supervisor elections, yes, sir.
But there was other elections, and she put her name right on it. So why are you so adamant today? Since you're running, it makes it look kind of strange, but undoubtedly Lori Scott didn't spend that much money?
Well, here's the deal, Madam Chair.
Sir.
We have a supervisor that is asking for almost 20% increase.
But there's
We're-
more elections this year in this process, correct?
Absolutely. And the
Okay.
legislature saw fit to provide discretion to the supervisor elections on mail they could or
Right.
did not need to mail. That's called discretionary funding.
Right? Okay.
This is a new statute out there. So there are ways to do this, namely email and putting in the paper, both which save
Yep.
thousands of dollars. And to be clear, the supervisor, and he well knows he does not have to cut these. I just thought it would be unfair to arbitrarily say we're cutting, and let me say that again, I'm sorry, I screwed up. We're not cutting. My motion sees a almost $1 million increase to the supervisor election. We're cutting his 19.5 or 19.4. My motion cuts his 19.4 all the way down to 14.55% without limiting opportunities for voting, cutting employees. So that is the genesis of it.
Well, why didn't you go after Lori Scott then? And cut her.
Again, this is a new statute that allows
Yeah.
for
May I
certain.
comment on?
Well, that's right. If you know anything about the state of Florida, and you spent time 8 years up there too, anytime they help you and it comes south, it ain't a pretty picture. It is not pretty. So, thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
I just wanted to, if it's okay with you, Chair, I wanted to respond to two comments that Commissioner Goodson made. One, I did a poll myself of the 16 largest counties in Florida who comprise 72% of all registered voters in Brevard County. We would be the only county of those 16 who would not be sending a sample ballot, mailing it to voters. Every county of the 16 largest counties mail sample ballots. Second question is to respond to Commissioner Tabaya. The legislature made a change to the statute to stop forcing supervisors to waste money publishing in newspapers with massively declining subscriber rates. That was the intent of the legislation. As we've seen it continue on now with legal notices and ads that we now have the ability to post on our websites versus publishing in the newspaper, which my office has done.
I don't think you're adding anything new. I think you're just doing what was
Doing
kind of
exactly what we've always done.
handed with you, correct. I'm actually glad that the change was made, that there's not a continual absentee ballot sent to, because I think that is something that people should request, because therefore it's absentee ballot. Otherwise, we should just call them mail ballots. But, so I'm glad that happened. Commissioners, I'm out of lights. Do I have any more questions or comments?
I'm going to second Commissioner Tobias' motion.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
Passes 3-2 with Commissioners Goodson and Feltner an objection.